boldly engaging the mindless propaganda of our time, apparently with reason. This is Rage of the Age.
This is Rage of the Age, and we have with us someone who has 40 years of leadership experience in the business world. He led one of the largest rebranding initiatives in franchising history with the UPS Store. He's the founder and CEO of 360 Management Services and is the author of the book Tighten the Lug Nuts, The Principles of Balanced Leadership. I want to introduce to you Rocky Romanella. Rocky, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. And you know what? You made a 40-year guy sound pretty good, right? I didn't sound as old when you got done with that, you know?
The power of voice, man. They can do it.
Yeah, make you sound young and aggressive.
You have 40 years of experience in leading through business. Now, that's not always from the position of CEO and at the top of the companies. You actually started at UPS as like a worker, a typical worker, and you worked your way up through the ranks. And then, of course, as the story goes, y'all rebranded something of the UPS store, and it became a major part. And now a lot of that was by your hand. Let's start at the beginning. So you're working at UPS. What did you initially do, and then how did it take off from there?
Well, I started part-time, working my way through college.
Part-time.
I actually went to school to be a high school history teacher and a baseball coach. And I'm sitting there and I'm watching as a part-timer unloading and loading trailers. I became a part-time supervisor. And I realized that the best leaders were those people who can get their people to connect the dots. And they were coaching and teaching. And so for me, I never gave up my coaching and teaching passion. I just did it in a different classroom. It happened to be the business classroom. And then I got the opportunity to be a UPS driver. I drove in Plainfield, New Jersey. It was an excellent, excellent job. And it was a lesson that I learned and kept throughout my career, which is the power of understanding what your company does, what you do, what's your brand promise and how you do it. And, UPS had a promotion from within policy, which I took advantage of.
Yeah.
And my dad, rest his soul, told me two things when I got the job at UPS. He said, hey, whatever they ask you to do, say yes and thank you, and then learn the job and learn some more. And so as I was working my way through UPS and getting tapped on the shoulder, hey, we're going to, we'd like you to go to Chicago and do this job. I may not have always felt ready, but UPS believed in me until I was ready to believe in myself. And that was a valuable lesson because as leaders, many times we have to believe in our people until they're ready for that next responsibility or till they believe in themselves. Maybe you bridge that gap of confidence, experience, and you help them, right? And then you get to that kind of break-even point, like the way a business starts and gets to a break-even point. And then when that person gets to that break-even point, that's when you step back. That's when you don't overmanage them. That's when you let them fly, right? Because now they're starting to feel good about themselves. And so every time they tap me on the shoulder, I wasn't always sure that I may have been the right person or ready to go, but I just kept hearing my dad say, just say yes, thank you, pack your bag and get going. For the family. And so we moved 9 times. And as you said in the introduction, I had the responsibility we purchased mailboxes, et cetera, and then rebranded it to the UPS store and had that opportunity and made the recommendation for the rebranding. And I will tell you, that was one of the most exciting opportunities for me because I met some of the greatest entrepreneurs. UPS is 100% franchisee owned, over 5,000 stores. Awesome people. And I look at entrepreneurs and I have such great respect for them because I don't know if I could have done that the way they do. No one's more all in than a small business owner, right?
Yes.
You slide I think about that. You slide everything you own across the table and then you say, okay, I'm all in, right? At the end of the day, they hit the cash register, drawer opens, they pay their people, they pay their vendors. What's left is what they take home.
That's right.
And so I learned such, great valuable lessons from them. But the first thing I did to go back to, as I said, I was a UPS driver and I worked my way up. The first thing I did when I took on that responsibility wasn't to walk in and say, hey, new person in town, this is what I think we need to do. First thing I did was put an apron on and go work in the store. And while I certainly wasn't as proficient as they were, I wanted them to know that I valued what they did. I wanted to understand it from the ground up like I did during my days at UPS. And then later on, we purchased over 20 companies and built what's today UPS Supply Chain Solutions. I ran this side of the world for UPS. And then I also made the recommendation for us to get into healthcare much deeper and wider. In fact, we we had a phrase inside of UPS healthcare, which is these aren't packages, these are patients. And now today, retired and, gone from UPS close to 8 years now, it's with great pride I see us delivering the vaccines. And so it's a great company with great people. And it's just was a fun time there. I retired after 36 years, took on a role as a CEO of a telecom company. We built cell towers, upgraded cell towers, and then retired from there, had a sale, and then started my own company, 360 Management Services, and wrote my book, Tighten the Lug Nuts.
So tighten the lug nuts then. What are we tightening? What's loose? What do we need to fix?
Well, it's interesting because the book is a story of my career in a third person, a gentleman by the name of Joe Scafone.
That's what I picked for you. Yes.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, how that name came up was years ago. I would sit in the meeting and you would bring me, hey, Phil, bring me a great idea. And I'd say to you, hey, that's a great idea. But what if this and that but always had you had that look on your face. Like, I don't think it's a good idea, or maybe I didn't do my homework. So I never wanted you to feel as though I didn't appreciate what you were bringing to me, or I didn't think you did your homework. I was just trying to challenge you not to stop at the first right answer.
Right.
So Joe Scafone, I would say to you, hey, that's a great idea, but you think Joe Scafone thinks that's a good idea? And people would smile. In fact, as people knew me and knew Joe Scafone, they would bring me an idea to me and say, hey, I covered this with Joe. Joe thinks that's a good
perfect.
I'd be like, okay, can I listen to it now? And so the book's written in that third person. And Tighten the Lug Nuts is one of the stories in the book. And simply put, when the lug nuts are loose on a vehicle, they're important. We can simply go over and tighten them, but we get distracted. Something else comes up and now we work on something we think is more important in the longer term. But in the short term, those loose lug nuts were important.
Yeah.
When we allow important things to become urgent, we get overwhelmed. We can only handle so many urgent things. And so the lesson is don't allow important things to become urgent. Tighten your lug nuts.
Because if not, that's going to be the more important thing.
Yeah, that
create more of a disaster for you.
Yeah, the front wheel is starting to get loose. And so people get overwhelmed all the time because there are things. For example, there's an email that you could simply answer, but you don't. And then a couple of days goes by, and now all of a sudden your boss is calling you saying, hey, stop everything. We got to go fix this. Or we got the customer we got to get back to that we never did. Well, and people always come up with, I can't believe it. I got no luck. Nothing ever goes my way. Well, you could have just tightened the lug nuts right then and there. So there's many stories like that in the book. There's a story I talk about my aha moment in the book. So all of us have those aha moments where all of a sudden, you tilt your head and things become crystal clear to you. And so there's those stories in the book. And so each chapter can stand on its own, but it's part of a legacy story.
So you're managing a business, or you're running your own business. Like you said, that takes some courage too. How do you develop the keen sense of knowing the difference between what's important and what's a lug nut that needs tightening right now?
Well, I think that one of the things you have to understand is what are the nice to do things in my business and what are the need to do things in my business. Now, obviously, when they're nice to do, we all like to do them.
Yeah.
But what are the need to do things? And I think that's so important, especially coming now out, post-pandemic, coming out of this difficult time. There may have been some things that you thought were important for your business prior to, but now coming out, what are the what are the need to do things? And then what are the nice to do things? And so you want to focus on, you want to kind of almost have that list out there that tells you, okay, these are the need to do things I have to do. And the nice to do things we'll get to someday, hopefully. But first, we've got to kind of grow our revenue, understand our costs, and what are the new realities? For example, in a business, safety should always be one of your top priorities. Nothing's more important to your people than you care enough about them that you won't allow them to work unsafely.
Yes.
But safety protocols may be slightly different now. It's not only the safety of your employees, and maybe the safety of your customers. Do they feel safe inside your place of business? Do you have all the right protocols? They perceive you as caring enough about them as a customer now from a safety perspective, the same way you care about your people. So that could change what's a need to do thing versus a nice to do thing later on, kind of that you can get to later on. So I think that would be the first thing I would do, is make sure you clearly understand the nice to do and the need to do thing.
I can imagine that one of the temptations would be down the road is when you get the needs ironed out and things are going well and you want to do the nice things, to go full bore nice and start to neglect the needs. And then that comes to bite you back later, right?
Yeah, and then what ends up happening, you just start to kind of lose sight of why you really were in business. A good example is, I love when you go into a restaurant, right? And,
Yeah.
it's a nice place, you've been there before, and all of a sudden it's taking forever to get the meal.
Yes.
And, and someone will say to you, we're slammed tonight. The kitchen's really full. We got so many people here. And you look at it and you think, well, isn't that what you were hoping to have happen?
Right.
Like when you started this business, were you hoping that, hey, I hope only 50% capacity because, we don't got enough people to work here.
Right.
So what do you expect to happen when you had that restaurant? And I love when people tell you these things like that's going to make you feel better. Oh, we're really busy tonight. Oh, that's great. Then I'll just sit here for the next 2 hours waiting.
Yeah, no problem.
Right. It's like when you're, one of the things I think that mistakes happens a lot of times in business is when your problem as the business becomes the customer's problem, they just leave. They just
That's
have
right.
their own.
Exactly.
One of the biggest words in customer service or in business that people miss sometimes is the word fine. And they think, the word fine is a good word, but think about it from this perspective. You and I are, here we are at the family, we're at a restaurant and now it takes forever. And of course the youngest person in your family always gets his meal last. And then they're the one you want to get the meal first so that you can occupy them while you're trying to eat your dinner. So it's just a disaster. And at the end of the meal, the waitress comes over or the waiter comes over and says, how was everything? What do you say? Fine. It's not even worth arguing, right? You just don't ever go back again.
Right.
So now, the owner says to the person, hey, I know we took a while for them to get their food. How are they? Oh, they're fine. They said everything's fine. No, I just never come back again.
Yeah.
It's not fine. I wasn't happy I waited 2 hours. I wasn't happy that the meal wasn't the way I wanted it. So I think in business, it's like when, if you have a late delivery and you call the customer up and you say, how is everything? Oh, it's fine. I really needed that for surgery, but it's okay. It's not here. The person, we gave him something else. No, it's not fine. So I think it's the empathetic way you handle a service disconnect can sometimes be the way you keep a customer long-term because you realize it's not fine. And maybe when I say it's fine, don't worry. That's when I say to you, look, I understand. I appreciate your patience. I appreciate your understanding, but you know what? Here's a, free dessert or here's a coupon for 20% off next time you come because you know what? I appreciate the way you handled it, but it's not fine. We should be better at this. You're going to come back to that place again.
Yeah. Yeah. Not for fine. That's for sure. But leaders, I believe that the higher up a leader can go in a position, the least likely the people around them tell them the truth. And therefore they get cut off from what's really going on in what they're supposed to be looking after. Have you seen that as the case? And if so, how do you fight that?
Well, first of all, I agree with you 100%. Second is the reason why leaders never leave their office because there's no problems in their office.
That's right.
So now, once you leave the office, you're going to see problems. People are going to address you and they're going to talk to you. And now so once you walk out that door, you better be prepared to listen intently and you better be prepared to address the issues that come your way. Now, I think that's the reason why they don't leave their office. I mean, if you think about it from this perspective, I remember when I was, as a CEO, one time there was a conversation about me being hey, do you want to be an undercover boss or whatever else? And the answer is no, never. It's a group. People love the show. I'm sure the people that have been on it are great people. I know a few of them have been on it. I would never want to be undercover boss. I want to be Cheers. Everybody knows your name.
Right. Yeah.
How do you feel good about the fact that, hey, I walked around, I put a fake mustache. I can't put a fake mustache.
Yeah, I know. You'd have to shave it off.
Yeah. Well, I mean, so here you're walking around and you're trying to have this perception of, oh, you don't know who I am. Meanwhile, you're finding out all these things that are wrong. Well, wouldn't your first question to yourself be, well, why has anybody brought that to my attention? Why don't we know?
Exactly.
Why is this going on? So I think that you never want to be undercover boss. What you want to be is Cheers. You want to walk around, get out of your office. And that's where, if you think about it, that's your company. The people that execute your brand on behalf of your organization are the most important people. The most important people at UPS is that driver, service provider who meets you every day and executes the brand. And those are the people that need to see you as the leader and you saying to them, hey, thanks what you do on behalf of our business. And I think that's what's so important. And unfortunately, that doesn't always happen.
Yeah, the undercover boss analogy, that's a good one, because in my head that means like I'll spy on you and try to, catch you at the wrong moment, and it's like, but like you said, I would rather have the boss that's like there.
Yeah.
They're around, that they know what's going on, and that if you have problems, they're aware of it, and that they're working to fix it. Therefore, I can work at what I'm working at. But that atmosphere of that means no one knows you, your entire company, no one has no idea who you are.
Oh, that's exactly
And
right.
then you show up undercover. So the only time you come to see me is to spy on me. Yeah, that immediately creates to me a level of mistrust.
Well, I mean, and even if you had good intentions,
Mhm.
what's the opposite? Okay, you have good intentions and you're trying to really understand what's going on.
Right.
Well, the issue is, as a leader, you're not asking the right questions of your people,
Mhm.
right? So, okay, now one day you woke up and decided, I'm going to go out and find out really what's going on. Well, why did it take you this long? Number one. Number two is, there's a way to go to doing that. When we try, think about the size of some of the operations I've had. I mean, at one point I had the whole Southeast. We had 80,000 employees. I had this side of the hemisphere for UPS on supply chain.
Yes.
So every time you went for a meeting, I don't think I can count on one hand the amount of times I went someplace in a meeting, but didn't go stop inside that operation. So if there was any operation close by to any meeting I was going to, so if
Mhm.
the meeting started at 8 o'clock in the morning, maybe I'd go in the morning and see how they load the vehicles, meet the people that way, or at the end of it before. There's always ways for you to go see your operations. There's always
Yes.
ways for you to go visit your people. And, even though they don't know you personally, they feel like they do because you're approachable. They feel like they know you because you're willing to interact. And I think that's what's so important. And I think that's, like I said, the first thing I did was put an apron on when I took over the MBE at that time, then the UPS store. When I was on the supply chain side, I'm picking an order. When I had the telecom company and we're building cell towers or installing cable TV. Hey, I'm going to go spend a day in the center, go spend a day with a technician, whatever it is. Look, Phil, that I don't become an expert by spending a day in a UPS store. It's the respect I want to show people that I truly respect what they do on behalf of our organization, that they are the expert at what they do. And so people then believe, hey, you're approachable. You're willing to
Mhm.
be, hey, look, it's like the 11 players on a football team. Yeah, we all know the quarterbacks, is the most important player or the key player or whatever you want to call them. At
Right.
the end of the day, though, if the line's not blocking for the
That's
quarterback,
right.
go ask Mahomes how this Super Bowl felt when he didn't have the block he needed, right?
Yeah.
It still takes 11 people to make that happen.
That's right.
And the same happens in business. Yeah, you have a responsibility as CEO. I used to always say CEO for me stood for Chief Enthusiasm Officer. My job is to keep people pumped up. My job is to have a vision. But my job isn't to run the day-to-day operations because we have good people that do that.
That's right. Exactly. Now, you said that UPS had a promotion from within program. That's not something I am noticing nowadays in a lot of companies. And I've known many of people who you would think that's the person who should take over this position because they've done it for years. They're good at it. They're dependable. And then some guy from nowhere, usually some young kid, shows up, no experience not even in the industry. Boom, they're in charge, and it's like, what?
Yeah.
do um, do you see that as a trend in business, as something that maybe needs remedying, to maybe look at those who have been loyal for so long and effective and promoting them from within?
Well, I think it's a great policy, and obviously,
Yeah.
I was a recipient of it. But I look there's always a little bit of a balance, right? You may not have a person ready for that next level, or
Right.
you may not have the individual who really wants that next level. So then maybe you do end up going outside, or maybe there's a skill set you need from the outside. But I think in all promotions, the first question I would always ask is, who inside our organization is ready for that. The other thing is that's an active responsibility as a leader, is to have a succession planning.
Mm.
And I think if you think about small businesses today, I love small business owners. I think they're some of the greatest people, in our country, and they're the backbone. But if you think about one of the things I think small business owners sometimes struggle with is their strength becomes their weakness, right?
Mhm.
It's that theory, don't allow your strength to become your weakness. Well, what do I mean by that? What's the strength of a small business owner? Nobody knows the business better than they do. Nobody's more all in than they are. Nobody's more
Mhm.
committed than they are. What's their weakness? Nobody's all more in than they are. Nobody knows the business
Right.
better,
Right.
right? So if you think about many of the small businesses today could be generational businesses. They could be on the third generation, and now they're trying to understand, well, who takes this business over?
Mhm.
Does Junior really want to do this? Do we have that person inside the organization? And so succession planning is an active activity. It's something that, once a quarter, you should almost be talking about, well, who's ready now for these different positions of authority? Who's 1 to 2 years away? Who's 3 to 5? What does Rocky Romanella, what does Philip need to handle that additional responsibility down the road? And I think that's what's so important, because it allows you then to start to build your team yourself. It's almost like, it's your single A, double A, triple
Mhm.
A, team. You're ready to go. And when that opportunity comes forward, you
Right.
know who the next person is. And so I think that's what's so important. And that's an active thing you do. You should always be looking at, from a succession planning point of view, both for the next people who are ready and also from a diversity point of view. Am I
Mhm.
promoting, the right people? Do I have a diverse workforce, from not only diversity as it stands in terms of race, creed, or color, but also in thought process, right?
Yes. Mhm.
Diversity, diverse ways of thinking are so important because it helps get you to that next level.
You're listening to Rage of the Age. Rage of the Age. Politics, religion, economics, and history with a conservative bend.
I definitely agree with the idea of having a succession plan, or a goal to raise up future leaders and performers within a company and a business. I guess though, how do you create that atmosphere and avoid the tension that might create with, like with many bosses, they might have the idea, if I train you good enough, you'll take my job.
Hey,
Right.
yeah, yeah. Hey, look, the biggest thing I know is what I don't know. So I always try to surround myself with people much better, much
Hmm.
smarter than I do. And I think that's a sign of not weakness. That's a sign of confidence, right? So
Right.
you're always, and then look, part of our responsibility as leaders is to leave things a little better than we found them, or
Hmm.
people better because of their time with me as their leader. And if I can't answer that question because I didn't have the right training, the right succession planning, gave them the opportunity to have the right vision of where their career could possibly go, I'm going to lose those people. And I think that's part of the turnover problem that's, inside of business today, is that people don't understand, where can I go? Look, I was at UPS, as you know, 36 years. That didn't mean I agree with everything that happened at UPS.
Right.
It meant, but I didn't disagree enough to leave. I felt
Exactly.
like I belonged, right? And I think, when you look at turnover inside companies today, I think sometimes the hard question you have to ask yourself is, do I create that environment where people, where their values and our ethics match our values and our ethics, so they feel comfortable? My quick analogy would be is when you take your kids to college and you see them walking around the campus, and all of a sudden you see that light go off because they feel like they fit, right? I belong here, right. And so
Mhm.
that's the school for them to go to, because they believe they fit there. It's not because, when I took the boys and they were looking at hockey or baseball at the play at the school, I would always say to them, look, go here because you feel like you belong here. Because if unfortunately you get hurt or it doesn't work out playing in a sport, is this the place you want to be? So you should.
Mhm.
I think that's what, and the same with companies. When you are interviewing for a company, they're interviewing you, but you're interviewing them as well. You're trying to understand, do I fit? So for me, I felt like I fit at UPS. They recognize hard work, my values, my ethics. So on those difficult days, you know, eh, I didn't think to leave because I felt like I fit there. They never asked me to violate a policy or do something wrong or do something illegal. I think when people leave companies, I think it's sometimes like your kid who goes to school and says, "I don't really belong here." And when it gets
Mhm.
difficult or you don't feel like you belong, then you start to look, let me transfer.
Right.
Oh, let me find another job. So if you really want your people to feel, you gotta find the match of, I feel like I belong from a values, ethics, morality. I feel like I belong here, and then I'm more willing to work through things.
Absolutely. So leadership is not just the mechanics. how this works, pay this bill, make this shipment, get this deal. A lot of it has to do with just humanness, connecting with those that you're leading. And my opinion is that's the one thing missing from a lot of leadership circles today is an almost disregard for concern about that human connection. As long as group A does what I want and group D does what I want it, and there's a profit, I'm okay with it. Everything else seems to just slides to the wayside. But you're saying that human connection is very important.
Well, I think your people are your greatest asset.
Mm-hmm.
So when, as a business person, if you don't feel that way, it's a problem. But I always look at people who don't feel that way, and I take a step back and I'll say, okay, so if you're the black and white person. You're the person that, okay, it's all about the dollars and cents. Okay, got it. So let me ask you a question then. What inside this organization, what do you consider to be your greatest tangible asset? Is it your buildings? Is it your facilities? Is it your equipment? What is your greatest asset? What's the thing that helps you get to the results you're looking for? And ultimately, they can come up with all the technology they want. Think, oh, we got the greatest this. At the end of the day, it's going to be their people. It's going to be the people who execute on behalf of their brand. Right. You think about when I started as a UPS driver, I'm on paper, I have carbon paper. My biggest issue was, when it rains, the carbon paper is going to get all wet. I'm going to get in trouble because I didn't have all the numbers down. Right. Okay.
Right.
But not today. Every driver has a handheld device and there's such technology. That's all true. But ultimately, it's that individual who's interacting with the customer, or that individual who's making the proper delivery, following all the methods, is what makes UPS one of the greatest companies in the world. Well, I think it still comes down to people. So every business. So if you take that approach, even if you're not the person that believes that it's a people company, well then just break it down by assets. What's your greatest asset? And ultimately, it's going to end up being your people.
Right. Because if you have horrible people, they'll ruin everything else, the other assets that you have.
Yeah, well, you'll be the person in your office thinking the world is wonderful, everything's great, and then the CFO knocks on your door. Hey, by the way, we're Chapter 11 because we just keep churning out customers because of service disconnects. And like, well, how come no one's ever told me that? Well, it's because you never asked. Number one, and number two is, there's signs always along the way. Do you pay attention to those signs?
Right. You have some principles of balanced leadership that you have listed. You got think like a customer, feel like a valued individual by knowing your work matters, act like an owner by understanding the business and your role and what leads to success. Process ties it all together and allows the ability to replicate the results over time and with new people. You want to kind of spread that out a little bit, and like if you wanted to just put that into somebody's head here in a few minutes, how would you do that?
Well, I think number one, it's, we talked about people, but I think it's important to think like a customer. Who is our customer? What are we trying to accomplish on their behalf? And what keeps that customer up awake at night? So as we're designing products, we're interacting with our customers. We want to truly understand it from a customer's perspective. A lot of times, as we're trying to grow our business or grow our revenue as a business, it's too internally focused. It's really about that customer. And if we can solve what keeps them up awake at night, then we're going to end up with a loyal customer, and we're going to understand the things that we can do for them. But when our people feel like valued individuals, then they act like an owner as well. They feel like they're part of the organization. They don't feel like they're part of the problem. They're part of the solution. So like, for example, when people would bring me a new idea, hey, we've got this new product. And if you think about it, right, someone in marketing or somebody in sales has put together about a 700-page PowerPoint presentation and lights and graphs and, so they got all that stuff going. All right. You're sitting there thinking, okay, that makes all the sense in the world. Okay. So I understand why that's an important product and why it fits in a portfolio. And of course, the CFO, he or she's sitting on the calculator, banging out numbers, and they're like, well, at that price point, with this number of units sold, we can make some money. I think we should. So everybody looks at you like, okay, do you think we should do that? And I would stop and say, well, the customers represented, our share owners, stakeholders, ownership's represented. How about our people?
Yes.
What's the training they need? So I always want to stay in balance. I always want to make sure that all three key constituents, customers, people, shareholders, stakeholders, are represented. So I'd ask the question, all right, what's the training we're going to give our people? Do they know why this new product's important in the portfolio? What's our service disconnect? How do we handle that? And then if all three things get represented, I would ask the person making the presentation to me, I would say, well, let me ask this question. If this was your candy store, if you were writing this out of your personal checking account, would you do it? And 80% of the time, people say yes. But there's 20% of the times people would say no.
Well,
I had one. I never. It was. I remember like it was yesterday. Well, I wouldn't do that. I said, "Excuse me." Yeah, I wouldn't do that because it's this, and this. I said, "Well, wait a second. Why are you bringing it to us to do it?
yeah.
We need a new revenue stream. We need a new way to do it. We need to grow our business. So this is a way for us. We can grow our business, but it's got a lot of issues that could be very detrimental." I said, "Well, if you're not willing to do it, I'm certainly not."
Yeah. I know it's easy to be brave with somebody else's money, I suppose.
Yeah. So that question at the end. So to your point, you think like a customer. Okay, that was taken care of. You want your people to feel like valued individuals. We had to work on that a little bit at that moment, but we've got that done. Okay, now we know we can make some money. And then the final question is, if this was your candy store, would you do it? And once that person says yes, well, then you know what? They're committed. They're all in. They're willing to do whatever it takes to make it work, right? Whatever energy, enthusiasm, whatever things I got to do to follow up to make sure the plan works. I'm all in right at that particular point. Now, there are some times I will tell you, people would bring me an idea, and maybe I wasn't 100% in that camp yet.
Right.
But when I said to them, well, let me ask you a question. If this was your candy store, would you write the check? And they said yes, I'd go along with it. I'd say, oh, look, you know what? I say to myself, you know what? I may not have been 100% there, but you know what? If they're that committed and they want to do it that badly and they believe in it that much, you know what? Let's go. You got my support. Let's go ahead and do it. So those are kind of the fringes. The person who says, no, I would never do that if it was my dollar. And then the person who's maybe came up with an idea that you're not really quite sure it's exactly the right one, but you know what? They're committed. They did their homework.
Right.
You're impressed with the way they did it. You got to ride with those people because it's not always about the ideas that you have or the people when you're kind of in a circle. It's anything that comes from the bottom up. You got to always give that as much thought as you can, as much support as you can, because you want to incent people. You want people to see that you're open to these ideas. It's that tone.
Yes.
It's that tone you set from the top.
All right. Well, how then does this play into, say, promising things that probably won't be delivered? I'll give a quick example that irritates me constantly. I go to these fast food restaurants that have milkshake machines, and they're all down. It doesn't matter where in the country. It doesn't matter what shift. It doesn't matter who's working. But it's magically down the very moment I want to get a milkshake. But yet that's part of the thing. Like, we have milkshake. It's always on the menu and you can get it. But you go and it's never there. And it irritates me. But I mean, from a business perspective, because I'm thinking I'll sell that at my candy store, right? Right. We have the means to have these machines in every one of our restaurants. People want milkshakes, so we should go with it. But then there's a breakdown when I'm assuming people just don't want to make it. I don't know. I don't know what it is. But how do you tighten them lug nuts?
Oh yeah. Well, I got my story real quick for you. I go on a Sunday morning, and I said to the guy, I'll have like a dozen plain bagels. He goes, oh, we don't have any plain bagels. I say, excuse me? He goes, I don't have any plain bagels. I said, well, can I buy a toaster? He goes, a toaster? I go, yeah, can I buy a toaster? He said, we don't sell toasters. I go, we don't sell bagels either. So you're not a bagel place. I thought maybe you might have been an appliance place. You don't sell bagels. How could you be a bagel place? Does that make any sense? I'd be like, what? I go, you don't sell bagels. So no. So here's the key. There's three questions that every business needs to ask themselves and settle, kind of come to, a conclusion early on. The first question is, who are we? Now, by the way, people, when I get the opportunity to address seniors and juniors in high school or college, getting ready to get into the workforce or beginning their career, these are three key questions that I think every business needs to answer and every person needs to answer. First question is, who am I, or who are we as a company? The second question are, who am I? What do I stand for? What do we stand for as an organization? So the first ones, who are we and what we stand for, are two questions I think most companies could articulate. So for example, in your case, who are we? Yeah, we're a fast food restaurant. We provide blah, blah, blah. What do we stand for? High quality food, customer satisfaction. What are the things we won't compromise is number three. Now, that's the one that get everybody in trouble, right? If you think about companies that have gotten themselves in trouble, right? You could walk around the cafeterias and all these major corporations that got themselves in trouble. They got banners up, they got posters up. But number three is the one that gets them in trouble. And if you think about it, number three is what got your fast food restaurant in trouble. What will we compromise? If the answer is every time one of our customers comes in, our full suite of menus has to be prepared, has to be provided. Well, then we can't go with it. Like going into Starbucks and the barista saying to you, "Hey, you know what? The barista machine's out here. The
Right.
coffee." Oh, okay. Well, I was kind of coming in here just for the blueberry muffin.
Right.
Right? I mean, like going to the Subway. I like to have a sandwich. Oh, we got no bread.
Right. You can have a salad instead.
Right. So that's the what won't we compromise, and that's the customer experience. And I think it's the same with you as not you personally, but same as a leader as an individual. Who are you? What do you stand for? But what won't you compromise? And I can tell you, number three is the one that gets people in trouble, right? So, for example, if you're starting a new business line, and maybe, when we were starting to climb towers, in the telecom side, and you said to the team, okay, well, if we're going to go into this new business, what are the things? Who are we? What do we stand for? But what won't we compromise? Well, everybody comes up with the obvious. Well, service, completion time. Well, how about safety? We're climbing a 100-foot tower. You think safety might? I think safety might be the number one priority here.
Very important. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm not going to go knock on someone's door and tell them, hey, your son or daughter just got hurt because safety wasn't our core value here. So no, we're never going to. But what does that mean? That means on that day that some customer's calling you saying, hey, I know it's 40-mile-an-hour winds and you don't climb over 40, but I think I need you to climb today. It's only 41 miles an hour. No, we violate safety protocol.
Right.
Well, same thing to answer your question. If you think about that, so companies need to understand who we are, what we stand for, but what are the things that we won't compromise? And as you're starting to get to that decision point of the compromise, that's when everybody say, hey, milkshakes, hot hamburgers, whatever, that's what we do. Get the machine fixed. What are we going to do to get that machine fixed as quickly as we can? It's simply not okay to say, well, we don't have it today. Well, that's part of our suite of services.
Right.
Right. I mean, right. So I think that those three. Now, as a leader, it's the same three things. Who am I as a leader? What do I stand for? And what are the things I won't compromise? Is it values? Is it integrity? Is it service? Is it safety? And if those are my, hey, never compromise, well, then what happens is that day that you make the decision to compromise those things, you lose your credibility. Then you're done. Once you do that. And by the way, the last point on this is leaders do not have the right to silently sanction bad behavior.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Well, what I mean by that is if safety is a core value for me and I'm walking around a facility and a driver moves a vehicle from point A to point B, even though it's on our property, but doesn't put his or her seatbelt on, and I see that and don't say anything, I just silently sanction bad behavior.
That's right.
So now, look, nobody wants to be the person that's always pointing out, hey, problems. But at the end of the day, I can't sanction bad behavior as a leader. So at that point, hey, how you doing? Hey, thanks. Hey, Phil, good to see you again, man. Hey, thanks for all you do on behalf of the organization. Hey, do me a favor. I want you to get home and see your family. Just put your seatbelt on again. Oh, right. Yeah, I'm only moving the vehicle. I understand it's okay, but look, put your seatbelt on because it's important for you to get home and see your family. Nothing's more important for me than you working safely and getting home. Hey, the way you came, I want you to go home the same way with all the parts.
With everything attached.
Right. But now let's say I don't. Let's say I look the other way. 3 weeks from now, something happens and someone says, hey, we've got an issue with your safety protocols. And you say, well, Rocky saw me driving around without a seatbelt.
Yeah.
You didn't think it was that important. So leaders do not have the right to silently sanction bad behavior. This, I don't know, I don't see, I don't, I was kind of just, no. once you see it, you have to address it. That's why, like I said, leaders don't leave their office because there's no problems in their office, and then I don't have to address those things. I think
Right.
that's the problem. That's how you get into this the emperor no clothes scenario.
Right. There you go. Good analogy. So you talk about companies getting in trouble over different things. That put some things in my head in recent headlines and stuff. For example, Coke with its uh, racial training, basically
Yeah.
being less white and demonizing whiteness. And there's other examples out there. I'm not going to list a whole bunch of them, but I mean, is that one of those things like, what do you compromise on? I mean, is it anything goes? Is it, well, we need this, so throw this program in there. They grab a program and either they didn't vet it or they were okay with it. Either choice to me was wrong, but how does a company negotiate like today's atmosphere? Can I put it that way? Everything could be made really political, ideological. And if I'm just a business and I just want to be a good business and good at what I do and be successful, but now I got everybody clicking on my heels for demands to provide this and do the stuff that's like, I'm not even in business for that. How do you negotiate that?
Well, first of all, I mean, I think it starts with not you, but the company
Right.
understanding, like, these large companies, do you value diversity because it's the right thing to do or because you're told to do it? You should be
Right.
doing it's the right thing to do.
Hmm.
And if it's the right thing to do, then the most you should be doing is enhancing a program. But if you're doing those kinds of things that are complete swings from one way to another, it's probably telling you that you weren't doing the right things to begin with.
Mm.
It's sort and so now you got to think to yourself, oh, as an organization. So look, I think it's important for every organization to take a moment in time now to understand who we are as a company.
Right.
And are we living our values? I mean, we have these posters, they're well designed, they're graphically correct, but at the end of the day, do we live our values? And if you don't live your values, that's how you get yourself in trouble. That's how you go from, remember, we talked about that concept of balanced leadership. Balance means that you're
Right.
not swinging left to right all the time. You know what I mean? It's so, if you say to the organization, okay, the next person we're going to promote is this, well, then the question you got to ask yourself, are they ready? Are you putting them in a position to be successful?
Right.
And why haven't we been developing that person for the last 2 or 3 years, and I think it really comes down to organizations understanding, are you living your values? Do you understand what your core values are? And if the answer is no, you got to really kind of go back. It starts with you as the leader. The problem with leadership sometimes is it's never about them, it's about everybody else.
Right. Right.
Right. Well, no, it starts with you. You're the leader. What have you been doing? We talked about succession planning. Have you been looking at trying, have you understood diversity is an important part of our organization? Diverse ways of thinking are great for us to look at things differently. And it promotes great values. It promotes great opportunity for discussion. Okay, but why now all of a sudden, is it become important? Well, no, it should have been important back here because as an organization, we said our people are the most important things. We value diversity. So I think the question, when these things happen, the first question you have to ask yourself is, have we been living our values, or do we need to change the way, our the kind of way we go, the way we interact with our people, and why is that? And I think you got to tell people, hey, look, you know what, we're moving forward for these reasons or whatever. But these swings are very difficult inside organizations. They confuse people.
Yes. Yeah, I'm still confused now about some things, and I'm
Oh
not
yeah,
even in the organization. So it's
it's confusing when you think
yeah,
about it.
right. So Tighten the Lug Nuts. Where can I find a copy of that?
Oh, thank you for asking. It's so I'm self-published. It's Amazon does a great job of fulfilling.
Mhm.
It's so Amazon, BarnesandNoble.com, and on my website, TightenTheLugNuts.com. You can see there's a preview of the book. You can read a chapter as a preview, see if you like it, and you can order it through there as well.
Rocky, it's been awesome having you with us today to talk about the inside basics of management and leadership. Leadership is very important. I love your viewpoints on it. I think it's something that a lot of us need to absorb back into our organizations and maybe gain a little bit of sanity in what we do in our lifestyle. I appreciate having you on today.
Oh, it's been a pleasure. Thank you very much. If I can help in any way, or anyone in your audience needs anything, like I said, go to the website, tightenthelugnuts.com. I'm very interactive, so people send me messages via the contact me forums. I answer them myself. So if I can help in any way, please let me know. Or if someone sends you an email, let me know and I'll answer. I'll help any way I can.
You're listening to Rage of the Age. Rage of the Age. Politics, religion, economics, and history with a conservative bend.
Welcome to the essay segment. As always, it was a joy speaking with our guest today, Rocky, as he goes by. It was enjoyable to hear his insights and philosophies on how, how he would run a company. And I believe it's very sound advice for many others who in leadership position to adopt many of those principles, hands-on applications, putting your hands to the actual work, not hiding in your office. And I just believe we gain a lot of sound wisdom from talking with him today. But as always happens in these interviews, when I talk with these guests, it spurs in me things to discuss in the essay. Sometimes they're not directly related, but oftentimes there's definitely something that is sparked that I want to discuss about as a result of the interviews that we do. What came to my mind was his expression that if it was your candy store, what would you do? If it was your candy store, if it was your money, would you do it? And I mean, a very colorful illustration indeed. It's not like everybody has a candy store, but I mean, like basically the question is this: if it was your investment, your money, your time, if you had to take the risk to do it, would you back it and do it? And that's a very solid question. And of course, if the answer is no, well, then why are you pushing it on everybody else, right? And it's a beautiful way to put it. But how many times have you seen things be pushed that's going to cost time and treasure and headache by those who themselves either don't believe in it or wouldn't back it themselves? And it makes you, to me, it makes me ask, well, why would you do that? Why are you advocating something that you yourself wouldn't accept the risk for, but you think someone else should? I think this is a question we need to ask out loud more often in society as a whole, because there is a huge just surge of people demanding this be done, that be done. And I want this money, or this needs to be funded. But it's like, if you personally could fund it, would you? If it was on you to make it happen, would you do it? The answer is probably going to be no for a lot of it. If you had to actually pay for it, would you want it to happen? Well, no. Then why in the world do you think it's okay to force someone else to pay for it? This is a very important question nowadays, because at some point you have a threshold. You can only buy so much, and it's going to break. You have to learn to shut off a valve somewhere. What is absolutely necessary? What is not necessary? What can we have a little leniency on, but on some points, where do we have to stop the madness? As I have heard in many ways, and as I say often myself, it's brave. It's easy to be brave with someone else's money, right? It's easy to be generous with someone else's money. But if you won't be brave or generous with your own, how do you have a right to demand that someone else do it with theirs? I think that's a very important question to ask, especially when we look into the realm of how our government works. Our government, by default, is what you would call a third-party purchaser. All their operations are in the third-party category. But to bring you online with what I'm talking about here, just to make sure we're on the same track, all right, if it's a first-party purchase, that means I decide how much I spend to get and I decide on what I get. Right? So I I am the one doing the purchasing, and I decide because I'm the one with the money what I get. That's a first party purchase. All right, second party purchase is where I'm deciding what is bought, but I'm doing it for someone else. Right. So I kind of, like for a birthday present, for example, I'm going to buy you a birthday present. Um, I'm the one going to buy it, so I'll decide with it, but it's for someone else, right? But then you have a third party purchase where it's somebody else's money and someone else is going to do the deciding in what is done with that money. And that's what the government is it's not like they're using their personal money. They're using someone else's money, and then they're going to make the decision for you how that money's used, and they run amok with it. All right. Now, of course, the basic premise of a republic is that the people will have enough sense to rein in excessive government spending with their third-party purchase. And the reason that's a necessity is this. Third-party purchases are by nature wasteful and inefficient. Thus, our government is wasteful and inefficient. Right? There should be basic things they cover, and it should be directed by a Republican mindset, that they are directed by the voting base, what they put it on. But the danger is this. These politicians tempt the voting base with free stuff, which isn't free. It's just how they sold it. I'll give you this. They promise a series of third-party purchases. You don't get to decide how that purchase is made, and the money is going to come from who knows where, somewhere. The lure is it's someone else's money, and you get to benefit by it. But then they decide how that money is used when they take it from somebody. So in the end, you get a watered-down version of the promise. But that's the lure they give you. We'll give you extra. We'll buy extra. We will subsidize this and subsidize that. And of course, you're thinking, hey, it's not my candy store, but I'll gladly use their money to make it happen. But what if you would actually have fun? Would you actually fund it? If you were to put yourself in the shoes of those who are going to lose out in the process to make this quote unquote dream a reality, would you be willing to sacrifice and be targeted in that manner to make it happen? We all know the answer. It's no. So basically, it's almost like organized thievery that, we'll just target this group and hammer them in and take from them. And then we'll finance this other stuff. Oh, and by the way, you still won't get to decide. That's what a third-party purchase is, right? It's the money used is not free. It comes from somewhere. If we do get to the point where the money's free, meaning we're just going to print it or digitalize it, whatever, we need extra dollars, we'll just summon them up, boom, extra dollars, right? If we ever get to that point, then the money will be worthless, all right? As has been demonstrated economically throughout history, right? I still recall the story I have heard many times in the Weimar Republic, which was the socialist / Democrat, as an unholy mixture, government of the German country after World War I, before Hitler took over. They needed money. They just printed more and more and more and more, to the point where, as the story goes, this person has all these marks, Weimar marks, in a wheelbarrow, but can't spend them because they're worthless. Right? And so he needs that much just to buy like a loaf of bread or something, right? It's horrible. So he wheelbarrows this stuff downtown, and he goes inside somewhere for a moment. He's like, he leaves out wheelbarrow outside, and of course somebody that was with him is like, aren't you worried somebody's going to steal all your money? He's like, man, that stuff is worthless. Nobody's going to take that money. And he's like, yeah, you're right. So they go inside, but when they come back, the money's dumped on the ground and the wheelbarrow's gone. The wheelbarrow was worth more than all the money that was stuffed in it. Why? Because it was just made out of the thin air, abstract. We need more. We'll just say it exists, but then that weakens the value of the currency. That we have to remind officials and even economic brains in this day and age of how that works troubles me. They're in love with the idea of the third-party purchase. We'll just make money if we have to, and we'll just provide these services. I don't know how they're going to explain to me these services are going to work, because if you're just going to give me money, I'm not going to work. No one's going to work. And who's going to do these services, right? How is all these things going to work? How are you going to go to restaurants and you got nobody working there, right? We're seeing that trend now, okay? Where are we going to get food if nobody's going to want to, work to create it, since, hey, you'll just give me the money and I'll have someone else bring me the food. See, that's where this third-party purchase thing breaks down. It removes personal responsibility and it removes the fear of cost. Well, it isn't my money, so it doesn't bother me. I don't care how much it costs. See, that immediately creates the atmosphere for it to shoot up. Responsibility. Well, again, it's not my money. If it loses out, I'm not losing out. Someone else loses out. I just want this stuff, right? But because the reality is if you had to buy it, you may not get it. Oh, well, I can't afford that. Or I have to save up for it. Or you begin to make choices of what to have and not have, what services you buy and don't have. And you know what that creates? It's called freedom. Now, when you remove that and you put your decision-making of what you buy and get and the money that you use into someone else's hands, aka your friendly, quote unquote, friendly government, what you have lost is your freedom. Part of what is wonderful about an economy that values freedom is that I don't have to buy what you have. That if I'm not happy with your service, I don't have to use it. Okay? If your product sucks, I don't have to buy it anymore. I'll go with somebody else. That's the beauty of an open and free market without a bunch of monopolies in it. But see, if we go straight to this third-party idea of, let them just give me money or let them just buy these services and get it to me and I ain't got to worry about it. Well, you've given up in the decision process of what you actually receive. That's the danger. That's the problem. We'll give everyone in the United States a brand new car. That sounds great. But then the government does things like, well, it has to be this kind. It can only be this size. You can only use this much gasoline because it's bad for the environment. In fact, we'll make them all electric. But we forgot to install all the places for the charge them up. So now you have to schedule an appointment at the DMV to charge your car, or who knows, however this. But it sounds silly, but that's what happens. That's what happens when other people make decisions for you, and it's someone else's money. You don't get to decide anymore, right? And because the government provides the car, then they'll do things like, well, you can only drive this much to cut down traffic on the road. And what are you going to say? No, I'll drive what I want. No. They're the ones who got it for you. They get to dictate the terms. That's how it works. We need to be wary about being so willing to give up liberty just because something looks free, because there's always a cost.
You've been listening to Rage of the Age. If you loved today's podcast, make sure to leave a review on the media you're listening through. Secure future episodes by heading over to rageoftheage.com and clicking the RSS feed button. Until next time, this has been Rage of the Age.